Hello everybody, my name is Carl Bombardier and I'm a master's student in sports nutrition at the University of Utah, and I also work for the Utah Outliers Hockey Academy. This is the first video out of 6 different sports education videos, and we're going to talk a little bit about why sports nutrition is important, and also we're going to talk about carbs, which is one of the main food macronutrients that we need to talk about when sports nutrition is discussed. So when we're talking about athletes, we're talking about individuals that spend hours and hours a week in order to get better in their specific sports or events, and hockey players are no different, right? You spend hours on the ice, you spend hours off the ice in order to get, work on your skating, stick handling, shooting, all the components that makes you a good hockey player. So in order to be able to practice well, you need to be able to fuel properly first. And if you fuel properly, when the odds are you're going to practice better, and then you're going to have optimal performance. So whenever you go into game, you're going to feel a bit more ready, a little bit more prepared. So it's important to keep in consideration the energy balance. So if you are training a lot and you're playing a lot, well, you need to definitely eat a lot more, right? In a day where you're actually on your day off and you're a little bit less active, well, you need to keep in mind that you probably don't need as much energy as you would if you're playing a tournament or if you're playing a lot of games in a row, right? So keep that in mind whenever you start heating. So hockey is considered a high intensity sports, and that's the reason why out of all the macronutrients, carbs is going to be the main one that your body's going to use. So when you're out there doing stop and starts, it's important that your muscle are full of glycogen, which is the usable form of carbohydrates. So carbs are really important, again, because they're the preferred source of the body, but they're also important for the brain, and they help with focusing and mental acuteness, which is important for hockey players. And last but not least, they're also a really good source of important vitamins and minerals that help your body going through competition. It's important to mention that there is different type of carbs. There's your simple carbs and there's your complex carbs. So simple carbohydrates are mainly food that are made of mostly carbohydrates. So we're talking about honey, strawberry jam or any kind of jams, preserves, maple syrup, and those are the food that you should be eating a little bit closer to game time or even between periods, because they're usable a little bit quicker and they go in your bloodstream a little bit quicker. On the other hand, your complex carbohydrate, those are the food that you should eat probably 3 to 4 hours prior to your game, because they're a little bit heavier. They take a little bit more time to digest, and that's your rice and your pasta that should be eating a little bit, again, 3 to 4 hours before the game. And finally, there's also fibers, and fibers is really important because it helps with making you feel a little bit fuller. And you can find a lot of fiber in fruits and vegetables. And it's also really important to mention that fruits are also a form of simple carbs. So the amount of carbs you need throughout the day is going to depend on how much exercise you do within that same day. So if we look at the recommendations, if you have a day off or you train less than an hour per day, you need 3 to 5 grams per kilograms per day, which means for an athlete of 50 kilograms, which is 110 pounds, that athletes need 150 to 250 grams of carbs. If on that day you do an hour of exercising, then you need to move to 5 to 7 grams per kilogram. If you go to 1 to 3 hours per day, then you need 6 to 10 grams per kilogram per day. And finally, for a lot of youth players out there, if you guys are doing training camps or tournaments where you play more than one game within the same day, or a couple games within the same few days, then you need 8 to 12 grams per kilograms per day. Other recommendations that are important, like I was saying earlier, different food at different times. So 4 to 1 hour before the game, like I said, I usually recommend a bigger meal between 3 to 4 hours prior. So if we go to 4 hours, that would mean 4 grams per kilogram body weight. Again, 50 kilogram athlete, 110 pounds, 50 times 4, because we're looking at 4 hours. So 50 times 4 is times 1, that equals 200 grams of carbs prior to the game. Most of the games won't really last more than 60 minutes, but if training sessions go longer than an hour, usually we recommend 30 to 60 grams per hour, which is what you will get in your Powerade or Gatorade. So it's important for players to sit through practice and games also. And then lastly, recovery after competition. So right after your practice or your game, it's really important to get a quick source of carbs right away to replenish your muscle glycogen, right? So when I say grams of carbs, just to give you guys an idea, high quality carbs, 1 slice of bread, 1 6-inch tortilla, half a cup of corn, half a medium baked sweet potato, a 1/3 cup of rice, 1 small apple, half a cup of orange juice, and 1.25 cup of milk or yogurt. Those are all equal to 15 grams of carbs. All right. So again, just want to focus on high quality carbs more than anything else. So the last 2 points I want to emphasize before the video ends is carbohydrate availability, and also the difference between a hard day and a light day as far as how the plate looks. So carbohydrate availability is really important, because the last thing you want to do is go and practice without enough carbohydrates or just enough energy, right? So it's important that as an athlete, every time you work out, you replenish your glycogen stores, so you get enough carbs to be able to have energy in your muscle, so that way you don't go into the next training bout already carbohydrate depleted, which also going to cause fatigue a lot quicker. So the last point is the plates. So when you look at a hard training day, the grain is going to take about 50% off the plate, which we're talking about rice, potatoes, cereal, bread, and pasta. Lean protein is going to be at about 25% of the plate, and we're talking about lean protein, right? So poultry, lean beef, fish, eggs, low-fat dairy, soy, legumes, and nuts. And lastly, if you look at the vegetable, it's going to account for about 20% or 25% of your plates with cooked veggies, raw veggies, or anything like that. You got your fruits here, water, flavor, fat, and all of the other elements. But look at the difference between a hard day and a light day. So now we have the fruits and vegetables at 50% of the plate, and we have the whole grain, so the rice and again the potatoes and pasta, at about 25%, and even a little less if you are within that weight management category. And lastly, protein is still 25%, so that doesn't change much. Again, just a couple points. Never going to practice or games carbohydrate depleted. Every time you're done a training bout, make sure you get a snack rich in carbohydrates and protein, which we're going to talk about in the next video. So again, make sure that you get enough carbs. So the last couple of points I want to emphasize again, we want to make sure you don't go into practices or game in carbohydrate or energy depleted, because then you can you got higher risk to get injured, and you have performance decrease, which we don't want. Also, every time you're done with a training bout, it's important to replenish those glycogen stores. And lastly, make sure that you diversify your diet and you adapt your needs. So if you have a hard training day, make sure you get a little bit more carbohydrate. If you have a little bit less of a training day, make sure that you get a little bit less carbs in there. So this is it for carbohydrates, and I hope you enjoyed the first module of the nutrition education for the Utah Outliers. Next video is going to be about protein, so I'm looking forward to see you there. Thank you.